I'm frustrated about something and
Yeah.
I just won't say anything to my partner about it because I want to be a nice guy. Like, it's unreasonable for me to say this thing here is frustrating me. So I will sit on it and sit on it and sit on it until I get really frustrated and just do what he calls a victim puke.
A victim puke. Okay.
Yeah, which is literally sex. Sexy sex. Have we got your attention? We're talking about sex on the show today. A quote from one of the guys we'll be discussing today is, women are sexual Ferraris and men are sexual mopeds. So sit with that for a little bit. We'll come back to that and I'm going to get Amanda's thoughts on it.
I was going to say, I have no idea what that means, so I'm very curious to know myself. So we're going to find out together. I
can't wait to explain it further. And
yes.
I think you'll definitely have some thoughts on it. So we're changing direction. Happy New Year to everyone.
Yeah.
Me and Amanda have had a big chat about where we want Snow to go in 2021. We've obviously had a couple of iterations. The first one was really about trying to get people to tell their stories of not settling, which was great, but we felt like we could only take it so far. The second iteration, we tried to tackle gigantic topics, which were quite draining to our brains and probably not feasible in the long term. So we kind of came at a compromise. So both Amanda and myself are obsessed with learning. Every week we'll consume multiple videos or podcasts in our quest to learn as much as possible. So we figured a good compromise would be taking the topics that we learn each week and seeing how they come together. So this week we're going to be looking at relationships and virtue. And Amanda will talk a bit more about that afterwards.
Yep.
And what kind of almost came about at the same time to reinforce that this concept could work is I started watching a show on Netflix called Connected, which is featuring a guy called Latif Nasir. He's like a science journalist, and he takes all these big scientific kind of breakthroughs and concepts and brings them into how they influence us in the everyday. And it was an amazing show, really did demonstrate how so many things are connected. So what we're trying to do is we're still sticking with the concept of settling's not an option.
Right.
And we're just trying to get people to realize how important it is to constantly question things in the world. So we're going to just bring you a whole bunch of knowledge every week and then just how you can bring it into your own life and hopefully will help you stop settling.
Yes.
So just the formal kind of introduction. Welcome to Settling's Not an Option. So my name's Adam Nebbs and I'm here with my co-host Amanda Stanhope. This show is for anyone out there who feels like they've settled for an unfulfilling life, whether you've settled in a relationship, the work that you do, how you feel about yourself. We're here to tell you that settling's not an option. If you're liking the show, please follow us on Spotify, or you could subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any feedback about the show or you want to recommend a topic, you can email us at cheers-to-not-settling@gmail.com. And finally, to conclude the plug, if you feel so inclined, you can donate to us on Coffee, where we're aiming to buy some new audio equipment. But I'll throw over to Amanda just to introduce the topics we're going to cover over the course of the show today.
Yeah, so we're going to try to hit 3 topics. Well, I shouldn't say try. We're going to hit 3 topics.
We're going to hit 3 topics.
We're going to hit 3 topics. And what we're going to try to do, in keeping with the new format of the show, is we're going to try to dedicate 15 minutes or so to each topic. And we're going to try to time it and see how it goes. But this is the first time that we're going to try that. So, bear with us, I guess is what I'm saying. But the 3 topics are, what is a covert contract and do you have any in your life? Why is being a nice guy a problem? And why do some women try to change men and then find themselves with a version that they don't like? So I can't wait to find out. I don't know what any of this stuff is about. So I'm going to be I've been studying virtue this week. Adam's been studying this relationship stuff. And so we're going to try to meld the 2 together, but I'm really excited to see what all these topics are about. So I'll be learning right along with the audience here. So back to Adam. What is a covert contract?
Thank you. Okay, so I've hit time. We'll
yes.
see how we go.
We'll see how we do.
So, a bit of context for you guys. I listened to a interview with a guy called Dr. Robert Glover. So I think about 17 years ago, he wrote a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And it was quite a controversial book, because if you think about it, you know, when it was introduced to me, I thought, well, you know, nice guys, what's wrong with being a nice guy? But the way he unpacks it in his book is amazing. And it really, you know, makes you reflect on, oh, have I got traits of a nice guy? And is that why things aren't working out, say in relationships or work or whatever it may be?
Okay.
So getting back to what a covert contract is, it's an agreement that you haven't actually made, but which you believe to be solid. So just an example is, and this is what Robert Glover talks about. So a contract which says, I'm going to meet all of my partner's needs without him or her asking. And in return, I expect him or her to do the same for me, even when I don't tell him or her what I want.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I've never done that before.
Exactly. No one has, right?
No, I've never done that.
You know, I don't know why I even brought it up. Completely unreasonable, unrelatable.
Like, oh my God, are you talking about me, Adam?
But it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, he talks about, you know, because I could even think about it in my current relationship where a couple of times now, because what he talks about, right, is the problem with these contracts is no one knows about them, no one signed them, and they never come to fruition.
Yeah.
And then the nice guy gets really frustrated because he's like, hold on, I'm doing everything that's in the contract, and the other party's not actually meeting the agreement. Like, this isn't cool. And then it starts to manifest in these, like, you know, resentments and passive aggressive actions and things like that. And I can say in my relationship, I did the same thing, which was, you know, I'm frustrated about something and I just won't say anything to my partner about it because I want to be a nice guy. Like, it's unreasonable for me to say this thing here is frustrating me. So I will sit on it and sit on it and sit on it until I get really frustrated and just do what he calls a victim puke.
A victim puke. Okay.
Yeah, which is literally, you know, you could be sitting there doing the dishes and you go, I hate this thing. And, you know, your significant
But are you puking about that? Like, are you puking about the actual issue, or are you just puking about, is it like where everything just comes out over something that's not related?
Everything. Yeah. Okay. So, like, maybe you are frustrated about, I don't know, something inconsequential like doing the dishes.
Right.
But then all of a sudden it gets blown up into this big thing, and then you just let everything come out.
And you're like, you did this to me 5 years ago.
Yeah. You're like, whoa. And, you know, like Robert Glover talks about it in his relationship where he would just explode and do a victim puke at his ex-wife. Yeah. And she'd be like, how long were you holding on to this for? And he's like, 6 months or so. And she's like, didn't you think maybe to bring it up with me before? And he's like, oh, no, I didn't even think about that. Like, you know, I've just been trying to be a nice guy. So I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Like, what do you think?
I don't get it. Okay, because I'm really interested. I do believe that I could definitely see you being a nice guy for sure. And not just like a nice guy, but a nice guy in this context. So it's interesting to me. Like, do you agree with him that he never even thought about it? Because, like, for me, if that was to happen on my end, I would have definitely been thinking about it. I would have just been keeping my mouth shut. But to say you didn't even think about it for 6 months, is that really feasible to believe?
Or I almost do think that. Like, maybe not for 6 months.
Or but you know what I mean. Where you just kind of put it in the back. I guess you just kind of put it in your little file drawer in your mind and close it.
I think that's it. It comes back to the contract, because the contract for me, like, you know, I'll pick that up and I'll look at it and I'll go, hold on a minute. Like, if I say something now, I'm in conflict with the contract. Like, I've just got to stick to this contract where I am doing all the right things and my needs will be met eventually, you know? So it's the absurdity of the contracts. If you've got any of those contracts, rip them up.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, that's really cool to learn because I'm completely different in that way. And to me, I would be more thinking, I wouldn't say anything, and I would think there's a contract, but I would expect that you should know and I shouldn't have to tell you. It wouldn't be because I felt like I was adhering to a contract. I would just feel like, well, you should just know without me telling you.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, does that play into it too? Or
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it is some level of you expect your partner to be a psychic and kind of pick
Right.
up on the vibes you're putting down, even though you're not vocalizing them. So,
Right.
yeah, I think you're right. Have you had any, or has your significant other had any that you guys have ever discussed?
A contract or like a
Yeah.
covert contract? Oh God,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, it's like there's so many. I can't even really think of one to start with because I just think whenever you come into a relationship, you kind of expect the other person to not handle things isn't the right word, have the same perspective as you do on certain things, or and that's not even the right way to say either. I'm trying to think of exactly the right way to say it. So because you're finding a connection with this person, you think that they're like you because that's why you're attracted to them, is because you have similarities with them. And so then you carry that out further and you think, well, because we like the same sports team, well, this person must like to do the dishes the same way that I do them too. It's like, it's just something stupid like that, where you just carry it over into every facet of your life. And you think just because you have some similarities and commonalities, that everything is going to be similar and common across the board. So you almost have that covert, maybe that's your covert contract, is that you have to be like me.
Yeah.
Or you have to do things the way that I like them to be done, even if you don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And I think then maybe that's the overall contract. And then there's like a million clauses within that. Like, how do you put the toilet paper roll on the toilet paper holder? Do you put the seat down when you go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
It's like there's all these little clauses in there.
Yeah. You need a lawyer. You need somebody, with the experience to sit down and say,
Can you imagine? Oh my God. Because I mean, I look at legal documents a lot in my accounting work, and I'm just thinking about that. If you tried to put a relationship into a contract, that would be pretty crazy.
It would be, we kind of do. So many of us would do this. And it made me think, like, this is why the divorce rates are so high.
Well, yeah.
This is why so many of us are frustrated in relationships, is because we all, create these bloody covert contracts that, like, it's always going to end in sadness. Like,
Well, of course. And I think the difference is now in my current relationship, I still have them. But the difference is that I guess I recognize it sooner and we talk about it. Where before in my previous marriage, we didn't talk about it. And it just, like you alluded to at the beginning, it just builds up all this resentment.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where it's almost like it's so far gone, you're just done, So much resentment has built up. So I feel like you're always going to have these. I think it's human nature in a way to have these covert contracts. Don't you feel
I think
that it's
so,
kind
yeah.
of just natural?
That's a good point that I hadn't thought of before, is that you probably can't eliminate them, but maybe it's you always have them, but you need to talk about them. So maybe it's having them, but then making them actually proper documents, I guess, like actually signing them together, sitting down being like, hey, so I'm just thinking about sitting on the couch now with your partner going, hey, so here's my contracts. I've got about 50 of them here. You can have a look over them. Have you got any? You've got 50. Let's swap them over.
Yeah, you got a pen ready? Yeah.
Like, that sounds really unsexy. That's getting very far away from the sexy.
Exactly. You said we're going to be talking about sex here. This is not sexy, but no.
People are immediately turned off.
But, as they come up, once you feel that resentment building, I guess this maybe, but I think the idea of a covert contract can give people a framework to work with.
Yeah.
So once you feel that resentment building, all of a sudden it triggers. Okay, am I working within a covert contract here?
Mm.
And maybe you don't say that word to your partner because maybe that makes you sound like a nut. But there's like covert contract. What are you talking about? But at that point, you know that you've created some expectation in your mind that is not realistic, and it's time to have a talk.
Mm.
And
Yes.
come to some kind of negotiation, you know, because in a contract you negotiate, right? Because no contract ever starts out where both parties are like, oh yeah, that's 100% what I was thinking. No, you always have to negotiate.
Yes. Yeah.
So that makes sense.
I like it. I think that's something as well really practical that you can do. So would you say the first step is acknowledging so you could have feelings on something and then be like, hold on, is this a covert contract? Yes, it is. Okay, so I probably need to sit down and talk to my partner about this and we can work through this together.
Yeah, I would say. Yeah, but I think it helps to have that concept in mind because I think being able to conceptualize it helps you recognize it sooner.
Yeah.
So no, I think that's very powerful to be able to picture. And even if you make a funny picture in your mind, like of this huge like contract just rolling out across the floor.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I just broke out my contract again.
But
so
yeah, I like that.
We are getting kind of close to the end of our possible time on this topic. Did you want me to talk a little about virtue and how that might tie into?
Yes.
Well, it reminded me, so in my research about virtues and being virtuous, one of the quotes that just sticks with me that just sums it up so well is from Alan Watts. And he said that as soon as you try to become virtuous, you are no longer virtuous. It's like you're trying to, and it's so true with a lot of things. It's like, if you're trying to achieve something, you're never going to achieve it because you're focused on it too much almost. So with that being said, so many, like in the relationship, you probably think you're being virtuous and you made these contracts, these covert contracts, because you think that they're going to make you happy in some way, or maybe you think they're going to make the other person happy in some way. And so you think there's some virtue behind doing that. But what you haven't considered, and what all of us forget to consider when we're being virtuous, is that we don't know anything about anyone, or we don't know that much about ourselves either. So anytime that we think we're doing something virtuous, we really have to question ourselves and really question ourselves and think, is that really true? Are we actually doing something virtuous, or is it actually going to do more harm than good down the road?
Yeah.
And so that's what it makes me think of with the contract is, I think you're creating these things as almost in your mind as almost like a self-preservation, some means of self-preservation or relationship preservation. And so you think you're doing the right thing, but it's going to end up causing a lot of problems and resentment and all that stuff we were talking about in the long run.
Yes.
So that's the way I would relate it to a virtue. It's because virtues often end up doing the same thing.
It's really interesting. But
does that make any sense?
Yeah, so by trying to be virtuous, you're immediately not virtuous.
Right. Once you're aware of it, like once you're aware that you're trying to be virtuous. So I think too with you, like what we're talking about with the contract, as soon as you're aware that you are trying to enforce this contract, all of a sudden you're standing in the way of what that contract is meant to do, which it's meant to preserve your relationship. And now you're just ruining your relationship. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
So
see,
that was kind of what I was bumping around in the back of my head.
Yeah. So Aristotle and Robert Glover having a beer together, and they come up with this. I like it.
Yeah. No, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, and so that's kind of the end of that part of our show. Whoa, I probably should have turned my alarm volume down.
That is 15 minutes. I think we did well.
Well, we're gonna just leave it on for today, so we'll know when the 15 minutes is up.
Yes, exactly. No, I think it's good. I like it. It makes it clear we've hit 15 minutes.
Good, we're good. But no, because and I kept wanting to ask you questions. So the next thing is about being a nice guy, or why is being a nice guy a problem? And I kept wanting to ask you questions about that when you were talking about the covert contract, but I knew it was coming up. So would you consider yourself a nice guy?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the problem with that?
There's a lot of problems. So the problem with being a nice guy is you just want to try and please everyone, which is really problematic because you lack authenticity, because like you're constantly trying to be a chameleon. You're like, okay, what do the people in this situation want? You know, whether it's in the workplace, where you're constantly modifying your behavior, and people pick up on that, you know, especially in a relationship. Yeah. Your partner would pick up, like, you know, like, I don't even know who you are. Like, you don't even show me what you want, what's important to you. You just constantly try to just meet my needs. And it'd be the same in a work relationship, because, you know, you'd spend a lot of time with the people that you work with. And again, they'd be going, this guy lacks authenticity. So it is a problem. You can't just live your life saying, I'm just going to try and constantly keep everyone else happy. And it was quite scary that Robert Glover referred to it as trying to be a chameleon, because years and years ago, I literally prided myself on being a chameleon. I was like, is this my superpower? Like, I thought to myself, was like, I can adapt to any situation, whatever people want. I'll pretend like I'm interested in that to keep them happy. And I've had some very unsatisfactory.
I was going to say, what did that do to you, though? That's the
Well, it basically, at the end of the day, meant I was looking at myself and going, who am I? Like, literally, it led to a path of me being like, I have no idea who I am. Like, don't even try to ask me my interests, because I don't know. I just like whichever group comes along and has an interest in something, I'll latch onto that. But I don't really know what I want. So it's a problem, because there's a lack of authenticity. And if you're not authentic, people won't trust you. Right. And you also just live this life where you're always seeking the approval of your other, right? Yep. And, you know, that's a problem. Like, if you're always looking at your partner being like, is this okay that I did this thing? Because in a relationship, that's pretty unsexy, you know? Like, your partner would be like, because he talks about the interplay between the masculine and the feminine. And he's like, if you're going to take on the role of the masculine is the doer. Like, he describes it as the masculine's the penetrator, which, you know, some people might go, oh, don't say penetration. But it's the doer, you know? Yeah. So if you're...
Well, that makes sense, though, doesn't it? That's interesting. Yeah. There's some connection there.
There is.
Interesting. Okay.
And he says, you know, because the masculine is the doer, is the penetrator, and the feminine, you know, and is the person who is penetrated, right, and is the person who receives.
That's interesting.
He said, which some people, because, you know, hearing it just raw like that, people would go, whoa, like, it's very loaded. People might, like, kind of take offense to it, but he's literally just defining masculinity and femininity, not men and women, because, you know, those kind of come together and they can be quite charged. So again, you're seeking the approval. So you're saying, I'm assuming the mantle of the masculine, but I'm always going to look to you and say, like, what do you want me to do, dear? Are you happy with this? You know, which is very unsexy, because then it's making the woman in the relationship have to adopt the masculine and then always constantly be the person doing, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, 100%. Well, it's just really interesting to think of it that way. That, gosh, I mean, I'm just thinking back now. I'm geeking out, because I'm thinking back, like, to where that would have started, like, eons ago. That, you know, that's really probably how our roles came to be. Is it something so basic as that? that the man is a doer and the woman's a receiver. I mean, it doesn't get any more basic than that, but it plays out in so many facets of life. And I think too, and now maybe I'm switching topics, but I'm also thinking we try to deny that so much. And women try to become doers. And I'm not saying we can't be doers, but I think you know what I mean here is like, but you try to deny that that's your nature. As me as a woman, my nature is to be a receiver. And when you try to deny that, it just causes so many problems.
Yes.
Not that you can't be both, but you know what I mean. It's just interesting to think about that.
Well, I think you'll find this interesting because this one took a while for me to get my head around.
Okay.
So he talks about, like, for a woman to be sexually attracted to a man, she needs some level of emotional tension.
Yes.
So he said that's why a lot of girls get together with the bad guys, right? Because there's tension there because they're always being jerks and, you know, like not returning your phone calls or treating you like crap or whatever. There's emotional tension there, which just at like a basic biological level is something that women will be attracted to. So he's saying, you know, you don't have to become a jerk and start treating women really badly, you know, women or men, however you kind of want to look at it. He said it's just some level of emotional tension. So he talks about positive emotional tension, which could be not constantly seeking the approval of your partner. So it could be you making a decision or saying no to something.
Okay.
So his example, because I think it's a simple one everyone can relate to, his wife said, can you drop me to work today? And he's like, no worries. So they're driving to work. She's like, just let me off here. And he's like, no. And then she's like, okay, let me off here. No, I'm going to drop you outside of your work. And so he like goes through all this effort, gets her there, drops her right outside of her work. And she was like, thank you so much for actually like taking control of that situation and just doing it.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I'm not going to ask you to walk 3 blocks. I've made the decision to drop you to work. I'm dropping you to work.
Right.
You know? Whereas he said a nice guy would literally look at that situation and your partner goes, just let me out here. And you go, oh, she wants me to let her out here. Okay, I must do what she says. Open the door, let her out. Right. So he said there's no emotional tension there because you're always trying to meet your partner's needs. But your partner at a basic level needs a little bit of tension, like for you to step up and say, no, I don't want to do that thing because I am my own person and I've made the decision that this is what we're doing, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. I wonder if it's almost a test. Because
yes,
I'm wondering,
that's what he calls it.
I'm wondering where it comes from that we being women, I'll just say we, would want that because I can definitely relate to that. And I'm just wondering if we want that tension because it's a test and we're almost like, okay, if you think back, again, going back to caveman days or whatever, and we need to be protected by the men. And so we're almost testing you to see if you can protect us. Like, are you going to be able to stand up for me or to me? If you can stand up to me, you can stand up for me. Is that?
That's quite literally verbatim what he says.
See, I'm a genius. What can I say?
Yeah, you're because that's it. He did it to test because, you know, and it is a good point, right? So like if you're constantly, you know, worried, oh, like, am I going to make my partner happy by doing this or whatever it may be? You're not standing up to your partner. So you're not going to be able to stand up on behalf of your partner. So it's a really good point. Like you need to learn to kind of say, and there's so many interplays throughout life with this, I think. So his call to action is if you're assuming the masculine, and you don't always have to be like the man 100% masculine. You're going to have feminine kind of traits that'll come through. But if you are adopting that, you need to follow through on it. You can't just do a half-assed kind of masculine attempt like, you know, I'll kind of follow through on a couple of things. You're the masculine there. You need to follow through and be the masculine, you know? Like
it's well, and maybe you just said this and I didn't really understand that, but I think it could even be reversed too, where the woman takes the masculine role on and the man takes the more feminine role on. And I think maybe you'd have the same interplay. I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah. So we're going good for time. We're only 9 minutes in, so we've got heaps of time.
Yeah, so we're doing good. But so I had a couple of notes written down, unless you have something else.
No, go for it. Yep.
That's the other thing I'm trying. I'm like, I'm going to try to write down some notes because otherwise I forget everything that pops into my head. I get lost in the conversation. So as far as like virtue goes, it goes back to what I said a minute ago or whatever, that we humans often try to please others or try to anticipate other people's needs and all this stuff in an effort to be virtuous. And so it's just second nature to us in some ways, I think. Like you were talking about wanting to keep everybody happy. But it also made me think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because I'll put a quick plug in for the expectation gaps. But the expectation gaps, which is my nonprofit organization, is kind of built around Maslow's hierarchy of needs somewhat. So I think about that a lot. And I was just thinking, as long as the nice guy is trying to please everyone and make everyone happy, the nice guy is never going to have his needs met. And so there's no way that you're going to be able to sustain a long-term relationship that way, or at least not a happy relationship.
Yes. And
it so I came up with this term yesterday, actually, when I was preparing for the show. And so this is just a different description of virtue. So virtue, Aristotle called virtue the golden mean. And what he meant by that is it's the midpoint between a deficiency of something and an excess of something. So for example, he said courage is the mean between cowardice and recklessness. So you don't want to be a coward, but you also don't want to be reckless. And if you can kind of balance those two, you end up with courage, which is a virtue. And so I was thinking about that in relationships, and I think that ties into this point.
Yes.
Is if you can find the mean. So I figured the way I would put it is the golden mean, or the virtue of in any relationship, is to have a collaborative relationship. And that would be the middle point between isolation, so no relationship, independency, where you're completely dependent on the other person. So like in this case, you're dependent on the other person to make you feel like you're meeting their needs. Like your need is to meet the other person's needs.
Yeah.
And so you're like way on this end where you're too dependent on the other person. And so it's like you got to dial that back a little bit and come back to the middle where you're collaborating with the other person to where you both have the same goal in the relationship, and you both bring your own strengths and weaknesses to it to meet that goal. So like in your example, the guy's strength was that he knew when he needed to make the decision in the relationship and take that woman 3 more blocks or whatever it was. And so that's how they kind of collaborated. And so they kind of found the golden mean there. So that's kind of how I was tying it all together in my head.
I think that's a perfect, look at that. That perfectly connects.
It's to like think of that as collaborating instead of I'm trying to meet your needs, you're trying to meet my needs. How about there's needs of the relationship, and we both work on meeting the needs of the relationship instead of meeting the needs of each other. I
like the idea of, so the nice guy lacks courage and thus lacks virtue. So when you're
I wasn't even thinking of it that way, but you're you're right though.
So that would be the big thing. So that's really the answer to the question of what is wrong with being a nice guy is you lack virtue. So you need to have the courage to, one, acknowledge that you have needs and what they are, and to express those needs.
True.
Because, to your point, because he talks a bit about codependency, which is, again, it's that, I'm completely reliant on the other, basically, to have an identity. Which I felt that when my marriage broke down, I had a codependent relationship, really. So my identity. Yeah, I did
too. So I understand exactly what you mean.
Yeah. And you're literally shit, who am I now? I don't know. Like, and so your brain, you know, you kind of go, all right, now I have to figure this thing out. But it's probably easier to go, all right, maybe I just go and try and find another codependent position because that's easier. I know that works. I've done it for however long.
Right. Well,
yeah,
it's what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he said, I think it's called interdependency, maybe, is where
it is. Yeah, interdependency.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Is where two people can stand alone, but they choose to stand together.
Yep.
And I mean, that does sound 100 times better, doesn't it? Not being so absorbed in the other, but saying, you know, we could both be separate, but we choose to be together. And I think that's virtue, maybe.
Yeah, I love that. Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Awesome. So I think we're a good stopping point for that topic.
15 minutes.
Man, we got this thing going.
We're on fire, guys. You know, look at us.
We're back after the new year. We're fresh. We're ready to go.
I know. We're just all over it. I'm so proud.
I know. All right. So sorry. Were you going to say something?
No, you go. Yep. Number 3.
Oh, so number 3 was, this one's going to be interesting. This must be the one that's about sex. Well, we didn't really talk about sex yet. But okay.
I figured we can maybe tie in the Ferrari thing into this one.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay. So this one was, why do some women try to change men and then find themselves with a version they don't like? And yeah, I can relate to that. But anyways, so what is your point with that? That controversial statement, as you called it.
Yes, because I mean, I think some people could take offense to that. So if I say, so my dad's a good point, right? Dad, he's a double divorcee. Is that what you call it? Double divorcee. Sure? Yeah. So he's a little bit resentful and bitter towards women, which is always fun when it comes to the topic of my mum. I'm like, I'll just leave that alone.
Oh yeah, we're not going there.
But literally, you know, my dad will say, you know, why is it that women will meet a guy and be like, I've fallen in love with you, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to completely change who you are, and then I will be like, I don't like you anymore because you're not the guy I met. And so my dad's argument there, and
he's not totally wrong.
Yeah, but you know, he said, like, why does that happen? You know, why change me then? Let me be who I am. So it's an interesting point. And some people might take offense to it, but he's just saying, like, and this is from Robert Glover, who has been a marriage counselor for many years. He has a PhD and stuff like that. He says from all of his experiences, there's so many cases where this happens, where women will try, and it's the sense of control. Like, you could even have a perfect person, right? And you go, I still need to change this person so I can feel there's some level of control. He said there's something kind of bigger, maybe biological in there that makes a woman's brain say, I need, and this could all sound very offensive, and I'm generalizing. No,
I'm just curious. So is it, sorry to interrupt, but I'm curious if it's strictly, because I definitely acknowledge that I've done this before. So as a woman, but do men do the same thing to women, or it doesn't sound like it? I'm
absolutely sure they do. Okay. But yeah, in this context, he's just talking about it from a woman's perspective, I guess.
Okay.
And because
I think women do it more. I gotta believe. Yeah.
But I'm sure, like, guys would as well. It's you know, it like, given the population, there'll be guys out there doing it for sure.
Yeah.
But he used a big example. He talked about 50 Shades of Grey. And
here we go. Okay.
And he said, like, it was interesting, right? He said that he reckons the success of that book series and the movies is not because of the BDSM and, you know, secretly women have all these desires to, you know, like, be dominated and have red rooms and whatever. He said, like, he thinks it's because it really related to women because of a lot of the, like, internal dialogue that Anastasia, is her name Anastasia?
Yeah, I believe that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. So Anastasia has with herself throughout the whole relationship with Christian, being like, I'm not good enough. You know, how can he like me? Things like that. He said that would be, you know, some insecurities that women would think about. But also, he said, do you notice at the end of the movie series, I haven't watched the third movie. I have watched the first and second one. I'll say that. And he said at the end,
I watched the first one. I'll say that. I read
Yeah.
the books though. I read all the books.
Okay. So you'll probably know
Oh
the
gosh, I
outcome.
didn't know. I don't remember, but
Yeah. But he said at the end of the series, because she loves what Christian Grey does to her, it opens up this whole new world of sexuality and all that stuff. But she doesn't like him, how he is. So she tries to change him. And by
yeah,
the end of the series, she's changed him into someone else,
yeah,
which he said, like, how often does that happen that a man will completely change his personality, to be like that? But again, he said, from the get-go, here's a character saying, look at this guy. He's like wealthy, he's charming, he's like meeting the masculine traits of domination.
yeah,
Like he's literally the perfect guy, I
right,
guess. Or at least that's how he's written. But
yeah,
then still we've got this character coming in and she's trying to change him into someone else.
true.
He's like, so
Yeah,
why does that happen? So I'm keen to hear your thoughts on that.
gosh, I don't even know where to begin, but it's making me wonder. Yeah, because you're right. I feel like we, and again, I'll say we for all of us women out there, but oh gosh, we're really bad about wanting to change people, and not just men. I feel like we always want to change everybody. Sometimes, whoever we're in a relationship, it doesn't even have to be a man. But I mean, I'm just really wondering, and I'm thinking back to the research I've been doing on virtue, and it's got to be, I go back to self-preservation again, because it seems to me like there's something in us that thinks that if we're with people who are like us, we're going to survive better, which isn't true. It's completely the opposite. You need people, and this is a perfect case where we've been talking about with the man and the woman. You need the penetrator and the receiver. You need one of each. And so you need someone different than you, yet there's something programmed in us that makes us think that we'll be better off if people are like us. I don't know exactly where that comes from. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I was going to ask you that exact question. I was going to be like, can you tell me where it comes from? So
I know, I didn't know if he maybe got into that at all, and he probably does it somewheres in his work somewhere along the line. Obviously, you haven't had time to digest all of it.
I haven't got to that bit yet, but if I find the answer, I'll let you know.
I know, it makes sense why we do it, but I don't know what the root cause is, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I know, it's very interesting to me, though. But then, again, you just get into that same trap, like you said, where you end up turning people into a version of themselves that you don't even like anymore.
Yeah, which is, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
That's like, but like it's so systemic. I reckon a lot of people would relate to that and say, yeah, I kind of have done that. So I think that's where it comes back to the importance of you both being comfortable to stand alone. Like if you're in a relationship, and you're constantly changing your behavior to placate your partner, it's always going to end in tears. Like there's,
True.
So I've had chats to my partner Nat about this, so basic things like practical things. So I can be really terrible at, say, just leaving shit lying around, or I don't know, just having lazy traits, things that, so in that instance, I've said, I'm more than happy for you to tell me like, hey, please don't do that. And I'll really make an effort to try and change that. That's fair. I think that's like just normal living with someone kind of feedback. But then I think, if it was something about your character or something that's really intrinsically you, that your partner starts to say, I don't like the fact that you listen to metal music or something like that. Like, don't listen to metal music anymore. Right. You'd be like, well, hold on a minute. Like this, I like this music. This is music that relates to me. Right. Now I'm denying my needs like that. I feel that would be destructive, and non-virtuous maybe.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yes, I agree because there's no mean there. And I guess that goes back to the whole golden mean because you have to come to a compromise. And at that point, you haven't compromised. You've
Yeah.
completely given up something that you liked for someone else. So there was no
Yeah.
compromise there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
maybe you say, okay, I will only listen to, since my metal music annoys you, I will just listen to it on my headphones. Okay, that's
Yeah.
a compromise, you know?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's better. That's the
And
golden
now you
mean.
haven't tried to change the person, you've just changed the I don't know, their modality or whatever you want to
Yes.
say.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what it is. Like you could change modalities without, and that's fine, without changing the character of the person.
Mm. So, what does modality mean in this instance?
I would think it's just like a practice
Yeah.
or a way of carrying out an activity.
Oh, okay.
Is
Yeah.
that what you think of? Or
Yeah. Yeah. That
yeah,
sounds.
that's how I was thinking of it. But yeah, I don't know why I threw that word out.
I like it. It's a good word. It's
Because
a
I'm
good word.
talking to a future doctor here, so I figured, you
You're just trying to drop big words to be like.
I gotta throw big words out here.
Hey, but look,
Oh
I
my God.
didn't even really know what it meant in this context. Like, I know the word, but I was like, I'm trying to connect the dots here.
No, that's all I meant. I was trying to think of a way to say like habit. It's not habits though, but it's yeah.
But yeah, practice. Practice
Yeah,
is.
practice.
I like
A
the
way of doing
example.
something.
Yes.
But no,
Yes.
I just we have to get back though to the other comment about the Ferrari and the.
You really want to know about that comment?
Well, obviously, yeah.
Well, it's going to be in his next book.
Okay.
So what he said.
So hey, we got to get him to pay us if we're going to plug his next book here.
Exactly. I don't even know what his next book's going to be, but people should really pay us for the amount of plugging we do on the show. But yeah, so he basically talks about human being women are the most sexually evolved creatures on the planet.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And he said, whereas men are like mopeds. Because
okay,
he said,
that makes
obviously
sense.
a Ferrari, is like known for its speed, and it's just like, it's this kind of like branded image of just like you can go anywhere, like you're unlimited. Whereas a moped, a bit more basic and things like that. So he talks about it in a lot of ways, like, the simplicity of men versus women, how complex women are as sexual beings. And he talks about, women can achieve orgasm through all these different ways. He said women can think themselves into orgasms. He's like, guys really, he says it very crudely, and I won't repeat what he says here just in case it offends anyone. But, he said guys are just pretty basic. They just want to.
That's true. Yeah.
Just kind of do the deed and I'm done. That's it.
Right.
And, and he kind of talks about in popular culture, he said over years and years, religion has tried to like stem the sexuality of women, So he's like, why do women have chastity belts? Why do women wear burqas? Why, is there so much slut shaming in culture? And, you see that all the time, right? If a guy like gets laid or whatever, everyone's running around giving him a high five.
Yeah, right.
Girl gets laid and they're like, oh my God, what a slut. Like, I can't believe you've been sleeping with someone. So, he said, like, why has there been so much effort there over the years to try and tame the women's sexuality if they're not sexual? Because he said, like, there's this dialogue out there that women don't really like sex. They're kind of just like, I'll just do this because it'll make that guy over there happy. Like, I have no interest in it. It's not satisfying for me at all. But
that woman needs to find another partner. That's what I have to say about that.
Yeah. But he's like, really, women are very sexually advanced creatures. They are Ferraris compared to us as mopeds.
It makes sense in a way. I don't know. It's interesting to think of being advanced. What is it? Sexually advanced?
Like sexually evolved, I guess. Yeah.
It is interesting. It does make it kind of, I get it, but it's just a really interesting thought because you almost can't even explain what it means. Like I'm trying to think how to explain what it means, but I do get it. Well, it makes me think, I had another thought about, and now I just lost it because yeah. My mind's on 50 Shades of Grey or something. I don't know.
Yeah. As soon as I dropped Christian Grey, you were like,
I'm like, okay, now I'm supposed to talk about something intelligent here. No.
Are you gonna go to the hardware store after this? Like,
No, I did have a good thought on it, but no, but it's interesting to think about. Well, and okay, here's an interesting thing. Okay, this is kind of what I was thinking about.
This is a good one. I can sense it.
And here we go, like with the virtue again, where you're not finding the happy medium. So, and Dan's gonna smack me if he ever knows that I say this. My husband, Dan. Sometimes I will say no to having sex because I don't feel like have the right energy or I'm in the right mood to give it my all. Let's say.
Yeah.
And he could care less, you know. He just wants
he's a guy, and guys are mopeds.
He's like, on his moped. He's like, let's just get it over with. And I'm like, I don't want to just get it over with. So if I don't want to, either I'm going to do it right or I'm not going to do it at all. So, so it's hard, but I can see that where you got to kind of, oh, here goes my timer. Where we're both kind of at opposite ends on that virtue spectrum, and to kind of come, to some kind of mean or middle that could work for both sides. And I think women, maybe that's why, because you hear so many jokes about like women not wanting to have sex and women saying they have a headache and blah, blah, blah.
That's what he means. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got to believe that that's part of what plays into it, is because, we want it to like be this whole production every time or something.
Yeah. And 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah, or you just want it to be more meaningful. You don't want it to, whatever. You know what I mean? So I think that we have to dial our expectations back a little bit and know maybe that the men aren't expecting that much.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm gonna say that crude comment because at the end of the day, like, we're all adults,
Because now you have to. And if someone, we're at the end of the show, so if someone wants to shut it off, they can shut it off.
They could shut it off. But yeah, he says, like, for a guy, he said, a guy really just wants to stick his thing in a hole. That's literally what he wants to do. He's like, that's how basic guys are.
Yeah.
And you think it is very true. Like, I think that's a good kind of example you make, is that for guys, it's, and that's probably why 50 Shades of Grey was so popular, right? Because it was like a sexy build-up thing, right? Like the way, I don't know, I haven't read the books, but in the movie, the scenes, like the sex scenes and stuff, are like really intense, and like there's all kinds of weird shit happening. And
there's it's not quick. Or, like you're saying, it's not like, let's just get it done. We got 2 minutes. Let's go.
Like, I mean, if Christian Grey was sitting on the couch, you guys both watching Super Nanny. I don't know why I thought about that should, but, you're watching Super Nanny, and he just turns to Anastasia and he goes like, hey, do you want to bang? Like, that wouldn't sell tickets, would it? Like,
no.
She'd be like, I don't want to have sex right now. Like, I want to finish watching the show, or, like, it's not sexy. It wouldn't sell.
Right. No, you're right, though. Anyways, that is why it's so popular, I think. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I'm sure that we could talk about this much longer, but we won't. Because
we'll leave it there for everyone's sake.
We're both going to end up saying things that we will regret later. So we're just not going to go there.
Agreed. Yes.
We're not going to go there. We'll leave that for off air.
Exactly. We'll talk about that later.
Exactly.
But hopefully people got some kind of good tips from this. So I thought
it was very informative for me. So hopefully it was informative for others as well.
Excellent.
It's some great things to think about, though.
Yeah. And I think they're translatable. I think what I liked was the fact that covert contracts was something that you could relate to, and a lot of people would probably have them.
Right.
And that the nice guy thing is a problem in a lot of ways for a lot of people. So, no matter what the situation is, both parties need to be able to stand alone and be comfortable to have their own needs met.
Right.
And then thirdly, just people women, I guess, just reflecting on why they want to change men. If the man, you know, that they originally got with is, you know, the person they're happy with, why do you want to change that? So I guess, again, all of the themes we're trying to relate to are, you know, how can you live with virtue, and how can you, you know, how can you just reflect, you know, just look inward and decide how to change things.
Right. And not settle, of course.
And not settle. Correct.
Well, and not settle for how you've always done things, or how you've been shown how to do things by media or whatever. Because, you know, that I think that's where we get a lot of our expectations, is by watching movies, reading books, blah, blah, whatever.
Yes.
You know, so don't settle for what you've been taught a relationship should be like, and challenge yourself, you know, in every day. You really, if you want to have a good relationship, you really have to challenge yourself every day to meet that person in the middle.
Yes.
So, awesome. Well, should I wrap things up?
Yes.
All right. So, in conclusion, we will say thanks for staying tuned to the end here, and we hope you enjoy the new format. We'll keep working with it and we'll be making little tweaks here and there. But in the meantime, like the video if you're watching the video, share the podcast, comment, do everything you can to, and I know it's annoying to keep hearing that and you hear it from everyone, but it really does help with the algorithm gods. And that's really the reason we don't need it to boost our egos. It just helps with the algorithm gods so that we can get out to more people. So until next time, we'll say stay curious.
It's not silly.
I knew I was going to do do that. Stay curious is the expectation gaps. Okay, let's try again.
But stay curious as well. That's equally relevant.
Cheers to not
Thanks,
settling.
Bye.
Bye.